Hello and thanks for joining me. Today we're looking at this guy.
What's up, y'all? My name's Higher and welcome back to my channel, Higher Videos. Now, digging into atheism.
Oh boy. Now this guy isn't an apologist or an evangelist that I can tell. He seems to make videos on racial and pop culture topics, and just decided to make one about atheism. And, well, I noticed it. As you'll see, he has not, or at least not yet, fallen into many of the intellectual traps and pitfalls of apologetics. Nonetheless, an announcement that one has decided to look into atheism is the preface to many god-awful, pardon the expression, works of apologetics and evangelism. So I'm understandably wary going into this video.
First, I've encountered two types of atheism. The first type of atheism is the people who just don't care to think about anything outside of all of this. They don't care to think about what comes after death.
I'll admit that this is personal incredulity on my part, but I don't think you'll find a single human of any worldview who does not give thought to what happens after death. I think that that's a fundamental part of the human condition, and probably the condition of any intelligent mortal species. You're probably more likely to find people who don't give thought on a regular basis to what higher beings may exist, if any, but not much more likely. This also seems to be part of the human condition, or at least the condition of people who find themselves in a religious culture.
They don't care to think about some higher spiritual force guiding all of existence.
Anyway, so Christopher Hitchens, what he would do for a living, he would go around the world giving speeches about how God doesn't exist. And then he died recently. And you want to know what he died from? Vocal cord cancer.
First of all, have you ever met a Christian stand-up comedian who was actually funny? I haven't. Even back when I was a Christian, I spent a lot of time wondering why our site didn't have any really funny people in it. I remember back when I was in high school, I went with my youth group to see a couple of Christian stand-ups, and all the laughter in the room was the same kind of laughter we heard in that clip, the laughter of, oh, are we supposed to laugh there? Feels like we're supposed to laugh there. He paused. That's usually when we're supposed to laugh, right? And second, glottic cancer, or cancer of the vocal cords, is detectable very early because of the way it changes your voice, and is usually curable. Hitchens didn't die from that, he died from esophageal cancer. Kindly stop making shit up.
They're just like, bro, I'm just living my life. What happens, happens. I don't really think there is a belief system there.
Here's a clip from one of Hitchens' last public appearances before his death, when he was well into his cancer diagnosis.
Let me just tell you something. For hundreds and thousands of years, this kind of discussion would have been in most places impossible to have, or Sam and I would have been having it at the risk of our lives. Religion now comes to us in this smiley face, ingratiating way, because it's had to give so much ground. We cannot promise you things of this kind, as religion always has to people. It doesn't make us morally superior, but it does mean, and we're not particularly happy with what we propose, which is overwhelmingly likely that annihilation and extinction await us. It's just that the overwhelming weight of evidence seems that way.
As you can hear, Hitchens was very much not apathetic about this life or the next. He just reached conclusions that you don't like. As you can also hear, he was still very much using his voice. And right up to the end, it was a voice for reason, sanity, and independent thought. How embarrassing it must be if you honestly believe that Hitchens was struck in the throat by a bolt of divine retribution to hear the voices of thousands upon thousands of atheists who have not been similarly struck. The lesson to be learned from Christopher Hitchens' esophageal cancer is not don't speak against religion, but rather don't smoke.
But the second type of atheism is the people who say, I don't believe in God, I believe in science.
Unfortunately, there are people out there who don't believe in either. They're not apathetic about the whole thing, they just reject both theism and science. Speaking only on behalf of myself, I've found as I've gotten older that I have more in common and usually prefer the company of those who believe in both God and science than those who reject both. Unfortunately, a great many apologists claim to accept science, but don't.
Now, these are the people who think they are the most logical people who ever walked the earth. They're skeptics for every single thing. If they can't see it, hear it, touch it, smell it, it doesn't exist for them.
You're mixing up your stereotypes here. Science is, in large part, the study of things that cannot be seen, heard, touched, or smelled. Things like subatomic particles and electromagnetism.
For these kinds of atheists, I want to present them with a theory of the heat death of the universe.
You're going to be hard-pressed to find an atheist on the internet, over the age of 20 at least, who has not heard of the heat death of the universe. And as if to prove this point, you then play a longer clip from a video depicting, with impressive CGI, a time-lapse of the far future leading to the heat death of the universe. Carl Sagan, another voice for reason and sanity who left us too soon, had this to say on the subject of the death of the universe. The fate of the universe may seem a little depressing, but we may take solace in the timescales involved. These events will occupy tens of billions of years or more. Human beings and our descendants, whoever they may be, can accomplish a great deal in tens of billions of years. The inevitable follow-up is, what good are our lives, what good are any of our works, if they will one day be completely forgotten, regardless of how far that day is from today? I spent an entire video discussing this subject. It's called Atheism and the Meaning of Life, and I encourage you to check it out for the details. But the short version is, finitude does not entail meaninglessness, and no apologist or evangelist has ever shown otherwise. Certainly, it's depressing to think that there will come a day, perhaps thousands of years from now, perhaps trillions of years from now, when it will be as if I never existed. But the fact that such a day will come makes not one bit of difference to what I am doing or what is going on around me in the here and now, during these years that I am fortunate to have.
Something everybody is in agreement upon is that one day all of this is going to come to an end. Whether it be because of the jihad, I think is what Muslims believe. I'm not entirely sure on that.
Well, look, maybe that tablet in front of you doesn't have Wi-Fi, but you got a cell phone, right? Here's what I found on my cell phone. Jihad means either an armed conflict with unbelievers or a personal striving to conform with God's wishes, depending on what flavor of Muslim you're talking to. Islamic eschatology, and it doesn't look like there's a single word for that, is actually pretty similar to Christian eschatology. There will be a long and horrible tribulation, there will be the return of a messianic figure, the Mahdi, who will defeat a figure of ultimate evil, the Dajjal, and there will be a resurrection of all persons from the dead, a final judgment, and a neat and tidy division of all souls into heavenly bliss or hellish torment.
Whether it's because of the rapture and the apocalypse, or whether it's because of the heat death of the universe, where literally all the energy that drives literally every single thing happening in the universe is spent. That's what the theory says, that one day all the explosions that can have happened will have happened, all the implosions that can have happened will have happened, and there will be no more energy left in the universe for anything to happen, and everything will just die until we get to this state of total blackness, till we get to this state of nothingness.
Well, hang on a second. I'm not familiar with anything in Christian or Islamic eschatology that teaches that one day there will be nothingness.
Now, it's this nothingness where I feel like the logical fallacy of I don't believe in God, I believe in science comes in.
Logical fallacy is a specific term with a specific meaning.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Because for this nothingness is like T equals 0, which is like the beginning of all existence, the Big Bang, if you will. But I don't want to specifically say the Big Bang is the beginning, because I don't think scientists really claim the Big Bang to be the beginning of all existence, just the beginning of this universe.
It's not often I see an apologist get this right. We are indeed uncertain that the Big Bang is the beginning of all time. Then again, as we've established, you don't seem to be an apologist.
The thing about science is it doesn't make claims for things it can't support with evidence.
That's, well, mostly true. Science does develop theoretical models which are consistent with the evidence we do have, and speculate on what else might be true. Sometimes these models are things that we can experiment on and find evidence for tomorrow or next year. Sometimes they require the development of new technologies to test, such as the Large Hadron Collider. And sometimes these models can't be tested with any foreseeable technology. But always, scientists are careful to distinguish between models which enjoy evidential support and models which are so far only theoretical.
So when we say the Big Bang is the beginning of the universe, it's not necessarily saying the Big Bang is the beginning for things outside of this universe where they too exist. But in this theory of total nothingness, when we say this is essentially the end of everything, from a scientific view, you can't really say that, because in the beginning, at T equals 0, there was also nothingness.
Says who? That's it. That's my entire response to that. Says who?
There's also blackness. Before there were photons, light particles, before there were atoms and subatomic particles, neutrons and protons, before there was anything, there was black nothingness, just like there will be at the heat death of the universe.
Again, says who? Because certainly no scientist is saying it. There was no light in the very early universe because none of the stuff that existed was in the form of photons, but there definitely was stuff that existed.
Now, if literally all of this could result from the nothingness present at t equals 0, or maybe it's better to say t equals 0 minus 1.
What makes the beginning of time is not the fact that we call it time t equals 0. That's just a convention, like calling the first moment of the day 12 o'clock. What makes the beginning of time is the fact that there is no time before it. There is no t equals minus anything. There are no negative values of t. So if the moment in time that you're calling t equals minus 1 is the first moment in time, the beginning of time, it has to be promoted to t equals 0. Then what you're calling t equals 0 becomes t equals 1. What you call t equals 1 becomes t equals 2.
I like this, because if everybody keeps moving up one, then I get to go home.
If literally all of this could result from the nothingness that was at t equals 0 minus 1,
You mean t equals 0. And yet again, says who?
then that means once we reach the heat death of the universe and we return back to nothingness,
Many apologists will assert that God must exist because the alternative is that nothing exists and something can't come from nothing. But when they say nothing, they mean a philosophical nothing. This is the total absence of anything which might be said to exist. Time, space, matter, energy, ideas, thoughts, anything and everything. Again, I spent an entire video talking about this, but basically, the nothing that apologists are arguing for is a very selective sort of nothing, in which a few things exist, such as the rules that govern whether something can come from nothing. But ever since this channel started, I have had an open challenge to apologists to prove that nothing is the primal or default state of existence, from which something is a departure that needs to be explained, rather than the other way around. To my knowledge, no one has answered the challenge. Anyway, the nothing that would obtain after the heat death is not a philosophical nothing. There would still be time, although it wouldn't be counting anything meaningful. There would still be space, and there would still be stuff floating around in that space, although there would be no possibility of any of this stuff being harnessed for mechanical work. That's what maximum entropy means. So the nothing that exists at heat death is different from the nothing that we atheists are told we have to believe existed before the universe.
there's the possibility for all of this to spring up again, or there's the possibility for some different permutation of existence to spring up all over again.
I'm not going to go into detail here because I'm not sure of my scientific footing, but there are theoretical models which would allow new universes to arise after the heat death of the universe. They are exactly that, theoretical, but I can tell you that they have nothing to do with what you're about to discuss.
Now, what that belief system, without any idea of God, just science, what this form of atheism is saying is that spontaneous generation is possible. Now, this was a theory that was disproven, like, I think about 200 years ago, because when people used to leave raw meat out, you can do this experiment at your house, you leave raw meat out, maggots will appear.
Now, Heyer goes into a long section here about biological spontaneous generation, which I'm going to cut out because, believe it or not, he recanted this part of the video in the comments. He rightly saw that spontaneous generation has nothing to do with the origin of the universe, being a theory about the behavior of existing matter. Now, recanting something you realize is wrong is exactly what you should do. It's exactly the behavior we want to see from apologists. So, Heyer, this is for you.
Head back! Head back! Head back!
Yeah, I know, it's the Queen, but I'm sure Her Majesty wants to encourage intellectual honesty as much as I do. However, you then say that the basic logic of your video is sound. You say that if we go to the theoretical beginning of the universe, we can go a step before that to when there was nothing. No, we can't. We literally can't, because that's what beginning means. The first, the prime, the alpha.
The thing before which there are no things.
If there is something before t equals 0, and again that's just an arbitrary designation, then t equals 0 isn't the beginning. The beginning is t equals -1 or sometime before that. Now, what is your justification for saying there should be nothing at the beginning? This is the challenge. Why is nothing, rather than something, the primal state of existence?
Literally nothing in this planet, me, this microphone, the sky, these buildings, none of this would be possible if we truly started from nothing.
Not every philosopher agrees with you. There are models of causation which allow for something to come from nothing and in fact necessitate it. The very short version is that if there is nothing, then there is nothing which governs the behavior of nothing, and therefore anything can come from nothing. But let's say I agree with you. Nothing in our world could exist if we truly started from nothing. I know I sound like a broken record here, but who says we started from nothing? I won't say nobody has ever said we started from nothing because, of course, Murphy's Law, as soon as I say that, you'll find some hermit living in a cave eating tree moss and scratching on the walls, probably with a doctorate in philosophy, who does say we came from nothing. But if you want to say that atheism requires that we started from nothing, you have to argue for that.
So this idea of no God necessitates this theory that there was always something, which doesn't make logical sense.
Why? Why doesn't it make logical sense? The only way it doesn't make logical sense is if a contradiction arises from the proposition that for every value of t in the past that was an actual moment in time, something existed at time t. What contradiction arises? And it doesn't matter, for the sake of asking and answering this question, whether the range of possible values for t is finite or infinite. That is, whether the past is eternal or non-eternal.
And that's why I feel like most truly logical people can't be this kind of atheist.
I am interested by your use of the word most. The implication is that some truly logical people can be atheists, which would entail that those people have a solution to the purported paradox you propose, with apologies for alliteration. But that solution couldn't be a subjective thing because logic isn't a subjective thing. So why do you say most instead of all?
Because there has to have been something. Whether you want to believe in a Christian God, a Hindu God, any other kind of God, any other kind of something, you have to believe that there was something that made all this happen.
If all this always existed, then it's not possible for it to have come from anything or anywhere, because there would have to have been a moment when it didn't exist, either before the beginning of time or before the eternal past, both of which are definitionally impossible.
The Big Bang, for example, for something to go bang, something had to have triggered that bang.
Why? Bearing in mind that the Big Bang is a metaphor, there was no actual bang because bang is a noise, and there was no air at the beginning to carry noise, nor was it any kind of explosion, which is something that happens in space-time, but rather the expansion of space-time itself. If the initial singularity at the start of the Big Bang was the first moment in time, then it's not possible for the universe to have been triggered, because there was no causal domain in which the trigger could have existed. And please don't give me any nonsense about something being outside time, because for an agent to be outside time is conceptually incoherent. But if the Big Bang was not the first moment in time, then perhaps it's not unreasonable to think that it was triggered, nor to think that the causal domain in which the trigger existed was itself triggered, and so on back until we either do reach the beginning of time, or we keep going back into the eternal past. Again, in either case, there was no moment prior to either the beginning of time or the eternal past in which all this could have been caused.
And whatever went bang had to be made up of something. You feel me? It's just like, it's a very much like I guess a paradox is the best word for it, but it doesn't make logical sense to say that there is no type of bigger figure than our universe, bigger figure than our physical plane.
You keep using the phrase, "it doesn't make logical sense," as if that was an adequate substitute for an argument. It's not. If it were, this video would be a hell of a lot shorter. It would go like this. Higher, nothing you say makes logical sense. If you enjoyed this video and want to help my channel grow, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Be sure to hit the bell to be notified when a new video is released. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you in the next video. I'm David John Willman, and the rest is up to you. See what I mean? These videos would be a hell of a lot easier to make if we could get away with that. If you just say it doesn't make logical sense when it makes perfect logical sense to others, and don't argue for your position, then you're simply expressing your own personal incredulity. And that doesn't impress or convince anyone other than you. Look, we can absolutely ask, why does all this exist rather than not exist? Or why does it exist in this form rather than another form? That's absolutely a fair question. But we can ask that question whether or not God exists. It's just that if God exists, then the phrase all this means God plus universe. Whereas under naturalism, it just means the universe. We're entitled to ask the question either way, and the possible answers are the same either way. Either all this is a necessarily existing thing, or all this is a brutally contingent truth, meaning it exists with neither cause nor explanation. That's not a great dilemma, but it's the same dilemma you face whether you're a theist or a naturalist. Theism provides no advantage over naturalism when it comes to answering the big questions. It merely shoves a finger into the face of William of Ockham.
The last point I'm gonna make on this before I jump to the second part of this video is that
empty space itself has energy. In every little cubic centimeter of space, whether or not there's stuff, whether or not there's particles, matter, radiation, or whatever, there is still energy. And this energy, according to Einstein, exerts a push on the universe.
If you're talking about the fact that empty space has properties and can possess its own energy, then yeah, that's Einstein. If you're talking about dark energy, which is the only thing I can think of which exerts a push on the universe, then that wasn't discovered until 1998. Which is it?
What is the weird stuff that's accelerating the universe? We call it dark energy.
Okay, so yeah, that was 4 decades after Einstein's death. Einstein is one of those names that apologists like to throw around to make it sound like science agrees with them even when it doesn't. He's the one scientist that even the Christian audience, whose retention is the true purpose of Christian apologetics, is guaranteed to have heard of.
And this stuff is the dominant stuff of the universe. Almost 3/4 of the matter-energy content of the universe is this dark energy. And we don't know what it is.
I take that as God telling us, bro, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. Like, as much as humans have the arrogance to think that we can discover all the secrets of the universe, which that was literally the original sin. When Adam and Eve bit the apple, it's because the serpent in the garden told them, if you bite this apple, you will know what God knows. You will be wise like he is. Literally, the original sin was humans seeking knowledge that God told them, bro, this isn't for you.
First, I hope you're not one of those Christians who believe that the Adam and Eve story is true. We may not be able to scientifically disprove the existence of God, but we can scientifically disprove the Adam and Eve story. The only way the most recent genetic ancestors of humanity lived as recently as 6,000 years ago would be if the time between human generations was less than a year. That is, if human females literally became pregnant as soon as they were born. You tell me, has that ever been possible? Second, if you think there are things we're not supposed to know, then don't become a scientist. We'll go on without you.
And I feel like the fact that 99.9% of the universe is empty, that's basically God saying, I created this whole massive thing, and 99.9% of it was not created for you. You couldn't touch it if you wanted to.
Didn't you just get through telling us that empty space isn't empty, that it's positively teeming with energy? And what will you do if we do someday harness that energy? What will you do if we someday reach the farthest boundaries of the universe, beyond the light horizon? Today, we think there are fundamental reasons why we can't do these things, but we used to think there were fundamental reasons why we can't fly. I'm not saying there are no limits to what we might someday do. I'm just saying, be very careful about saying that there are limits to what we might someday do.
I guess I see that as a bit of cosmic spiritual poetry, but if some people want to believe that, oh no, it's really just empty, there's nothing in 99.9% of this universe, then I guess that's your point of view. But you can't refute the logic of spontaneous generation being a myth, and for you to not believe in God is to believe in spontaneous generation.
And spontaneous generation is the maggot thing, which you already retracted.
Now, if any atheists who believe in science, not God, have heard that argument and still feel convinced in their atheist ways, I would love to hear down in your comments your response to those points that I made. But now I want to move into the second part of the video, which
I have no idea what you were about to say here, but I give you an enormous amount of credit for not saying it once you discovered it was false. So many apologists don't even do that. So, once again, but it sounds like your overarching theory is that if there is nothing after the heat death, then something could have come from nothing, just like something came from nothing before the Big Bang, and that's impossible because something can't come from nothing. But you haven't shown the most important part of that equation, which is that an atheist worldview entails that at some moment in the past, there was a philosophical nothing. If you choose to make more philosophy of religion videos in the future, I'd encourage you to look past the apologetic book titles, look past the headlines, look past the cheap laughs, and look past the easy answers. If you enjoyed this video and want to help my channel grow, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Be sure to, holy crap, deja vu. Be sure to hit the bell to be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to share your thoughts on higher videos or lower tier arguments, leave a comment below. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. I'm David John Wellman, and the rest is up to you.